Good morning everyone. We're back with a night of the new magicians and we're going to see what happens with Jack and Annie, whether they manage to get to the Eiffel Tower or not by 10 p.m. So here we go. Chapter 7. Start peddling. Wow, whispered Jack. He reached into his satchel and pulled out their rhyme book. I'll say the first line of the rhyme, Jack said to Annie. You say the second. Then we'll start peddling as fast as we can. The street's empty. No one will see us, so we can... Good, interrupted Annie. Let's get going. Jack held up the rhyme book so they could both read by the light of the street lamp. He read his first line. Whirl and twirl and swirl and spin. Then Annie read the second line. T-roll, I-B-I, Ben. Jack shoved the book back into his satchel. Pedal! He cried. Jack and Annie balanced themselves on the bike and pedalled hard. The bike rattled over the cobblestones. Faster! Shouted Jack. He pedalled as hard and as fast as he could. The bike shot forward. The front wheel began rising off the stone pavement. Whoa! Cried Annie. Hold on tight! Cried Jack. Jack gripped his handlebars as the wheels spun faster and faster and the bicycle rose into the air. It rose higher and higher above the dark street, above the rooftops and into the moonlit sky. Turn left, shouted Jack. Annie turned her handlebars and the flying bicycle headed straight for the Eiffel Tower. There you go, there's a picture of them. The white beams of the tower's spotlights swept over Paris, shining on chimneys, church steeples and domes. But Jack kept his eyes fixed on the glowing iron tower. That was where they had to go. That was their goal. As Jack and Annie pedalled, the warm Paris air embraced them, holding the bike steady. With very little effort, they drew closer and closer to the tower. Soon they were almost there. We have to land, shouted Jack. I know, shouted Annie. Lean forward. They both leaned forward. The front wheel of the bike dipped. Annie steadied her handlebars as the bike zoomed down towards the base of the tower. Stop pedalling, said Jack. He was afraid they would dive straight into the ground. The bike seemed to have a mind of its own. As it drew nearer to the base of the tower, it began to drop softly and slowly like a falling feather. The bike floated closer and closer to the ground. Its wheels brushed the grass of a shadowy garden not far from the tower. Jack and Annie pushed on the brakes and the bike slowed to a stop. Then it fell gently onto its side, dumping Jack and Annie onto the soft, wet grass. Jack looked up. The Eiffel Tower loomed above them, reaching towards the bright Paris moon. We made it, said Annie breathlessly. Not yet, said Jack. We still have to find that party. He and Annie stood up. But first we have to leave the bike under the tower like we promised, said Annie. Jack and Annie picked up the big bike. They jumped back on and started pedalling towards the Eiffel Tower. The bike felt a lot clunkier on the ground than it had in the air. As they bumped over the grass, they saw people streaming away from the fairgrounds. It looks like the fair's closing, said Annie. Jack and Annie parked the bike in a bike stand beneath the tower. The area looked deserted. There was no sign of a party or the new magicians. A single guard stood under one of the tall arches. Excuse me, Annie called to the guard. Do you know what time it is? Almost 10, answered the guard. Is the tower closed for the day? Said Jack. Yes, I'm afraid it is, said the guard. We heard there was going to be a party at the Eiffel Tower tonight, said Annie. The guard shook his head. No, sorry. As you can see, there is no party here. Unless you mean the private affair at the top of the tower. Is there a private party at the very top? Said Annie. She and Jack looked up. The top of the tower seemed a mile away. Yes, with some very important guests, said the guard. He leaned closer and whispered. Mr. Thomas Edison, Dr. Louis Pasteur, and Mr. Alexander Graham Bell. That's our party, exclaimed Annie. Is there a fourth guest? Jack asked. There may be others, but I didn't see anyone else go up, said the guard. We need to be up there too, said Annie. How do we get up? The guard smiled. I am sorry, he said, but the elevators are all shut down for the night. Even if you had an invitation, the only way you could get up to the top was to climb up the steps. The guard looked up. And that is quite a few steps indeed. Come back bright and early tomorrow and you can ride the elevators. The guard tipped his hat and strolled away. Excuse me, sir, Annie called after him. Just exactly how many steps are there? To be exact, there are 1,652 steps to the platform at the top of the Eiffel Tower, the guard said. Then he disappeared into the darkness. That's too many steps, said Jack. Let's fly up on the bike, said Annie. We can't, said Jack. We can only use a rhyme once, remember? He pulled out their book of rhymes and read the ones they hadn't used. Find a treasure you must never lose. That doesn't help, said Annie. Pull a cloud from the sky, read Jack. No, that doesn't help either, said Annie. Turn into ducks, read Jack. Annie smiled. Forget it. I'm not meeting Thomas Edison as a duck, said Jack. So, said Annie. The steps, said Jack. Jack and Annie moved quickly around the base of the tower, searching for the steps. There, said Jack. They hurried to a staircase, tucked inside one of the legs of the tower. Jack gripped the iron railing. Ready? He said. Yep, said Annie. Let's go. Together they started up the 1,652 steps that led to the platform of the top of the Eiffel Tower. Exciting. Chapter 8 is called Secrets. Jack could see the Paris sky through the iron rails of the tower. At first, climbing was easy. The steps weren't very steep, and Jack counted each one as they climbed. 26, 27, 28. I wonder what's going on at the top now, said Annie. 31, 32, 33, breathed Jack. I wonder if the sorcerer is there with the others, said Annie. What will he do when he finds out those guys aren't the kind of magicians he thinks they are? Don't know, breathed Jack. 49, 50. I bet he won't believe them, said Annie. He might kidnap them and force them to tell their secrets. 61, 62, said Jack. Faster, faster, said Annie. By the time Jack had counted 360 steps to the tower's first-storey platform, they were both panting. Jack's feet felt like lead. Oh, that's a lot of steps, said Annie, out of breath. No kidding, said Jack, gasping between words. But we have to keep going. They kept going, but a little more slowly. Jack picked up the count. 361, 362. You can see how he might have thought Alexander Graham Bell was a new magician, said Annie, panting. 392, 393, said Jack. Think about it, said Annie. You've never used a phone in your life, then one day you're picking up this thing, hear a voice talking, the voice of someone who lives far away. You'd think, magic, said Jack. 444, 445. And Thomas Edison, said Annie. Think about it. Thousands of years you depend on fire for light. Then one day you flip a switch. Presto! A glass bulb lights up. Magic! Gasped Jack. 510, 511. And Louis Pasteur. Think about it, said Annie. There are all these diseases. Nobody knows what's causing them. Then one day, this guy discovers germs and he figures out a way to wipe out the bad ones. Magic, said Jack. 602, 603, 604. I can't believe the sorcerer would do anything mean to these guys, said Annie. Even if he is evil, said Jack. 626, 627. His leg muscles burned, but he moved like a machine up the mountain of steps. Finally, they reached the second platform. 700, breathed Jack. We have to keep going, said Annie. Keep going, and let's get our rhyme ready, said Jack. As soon as we see the sorcerer, we have to say it, make him disappear. Right, breathed Annie. That's our mission. Protect the new magicians and find out their secrets for Merlin. Don't talk. Save breath, said Jack. Jack and Annie kept climbing and counting, drawing closer to the top of the tower. Jack heard piano music. As they climbed higher, the music grew louder. Finally, Jack and Annie climbed onto the third platform. 1,652, gasped Jack. They were almost at the very top of the tower. A spiral staircase led from the platform up to a terrace. Jack's leg muscles ached, and his head hurt, and his heart pounded. But we have to keep going, he whispered. He and Annie dragged themselves up the spiral staircase that led to the terrace. They both collapsed and sat on the top step, trying to breathe. A flag overhead flapped noisily. Damp with sweat, Jack felt chilled by the wind. The piano music was coming from a small apartment on the terrace. I wonder who's playing, said Annie, still gasping for breath. Maybe one of the magicians, said Jack. Or the sorcerer, said Annie. Jack felt a surge of fear. It almost took away his tiredness. We have to make him disappear, he said. He stood up shakily. Let's look through the window, said Annie. The two of them struggled against the wind as they staggered to the window of the apartment. When they peeked in, they saw a cosy room with leather chairs and glowing lamps. A man with a trim, pointed beard was playing the piano. Behind him stood an elderly man with a greying beard, a big man with a bushy white beard, and a friendly-looking man with no beard. All of them were smiling and nodding their heads in time to the music. There are 4 of them in there, whispered Jack. There they are. Is the 4th one the sorcerer, said Annie, or is the 4th one a new magician? I don't think any of them are the sorcerer, whispered Jack. None of them look evil. They all look pretty nice. What is this place anyway, said Annie. Let's check the book, said Jack. He pulled out the guidebook and looked up the Eiffel Tower. He found a drawing of the tower. Each platform was labelled. The area at the top read, at the very top of the Eiffel Tower is the apartment of Gustav Eiffel. The picture showed Gustav Eiffel sitting in his apartment. Look, he's the guy playing the piano, said Jack. He read on. Gustav Eiffel is one of the world's master engineers. He built the Eiffel Tower with glass and iron, the world's newest building materials. Since these materials are lighter than stone or brick, structures can be built very tall. The tower's open design and its iron beams keep it stable in strong winds. He's the 4th magician, whispered Jack. The magician of iron. He bends the metals of earth and triumphs over the wind. They're all together now, said Annie. Alexander Graham Bell, Thomas Edison, Louis Pasteur and Gustav Eiffel. The 4 new magicians. And the evil sorcerer hasn't shown up yet, said Jack. Come on, said Annie. We have to warn them about him. And find out their secrets before he does, said Jack. He and Annie walked to the door of the apartment. Annie knocked. The night fell silent as the piano music stopped. Oh, bother, thought Jack. How would they explain such a weird situation to these famous men? The door of the apartment opened. Gustav Eiffel looked out. Yes, he said. Hello, can we come in? Asked Annie. Mr. Eiffel looked startled. Goodness, I seem to be having many unexpected guests tonight. How did you get up here, little girl? I thought the elevators were closed. My brother and I climbed up the stairs, said Annie. Oh my, that is a very long climb for 2 children, said Mr. Eiffel. Or anyone else for that matter. Did someone invite you to the party here too? Not exactly, said Annie. Well, come in anyway. The more the merrier. Mr. Eiffel stepped back to let Annie and Jack inside. Then he closed the door behind them. The 4 men looked curiously at Jack and Annie. Before you tell us about yourselves, allow me to introduce my other unexpected guests, said Mr. Eiffel. This is Dr. Louis Pasteur. He pointed to the elderly man with the greying beard. And this is Mr. Alexander Graham Bell. The big man with the white beard nodded. And Mr. Thomas Alva Edison. The friendly-looking man reached out and shook both of their hands, first Annie's, then Jack's. You can call me Alva, Mr. Edison said. Hi, Alva, Jack murmured. He couldn't believe he was shaking hands with Thomas Alva Edison. You can call us Jack and Annie, said Annie. So Jack and Annie, how did you learn about this gathering? Mr. Eiffel asked. You have nothing to do with the invitations these gentlemen received, do you? Well, Annie smiled a goofy grin, as if she didn't know exactly what to say next. She took a deep breath. Well, no, she said, but we know who sent them. Who? Asked Mr. Eiffel. An evil sorcerer who wants to steal the secrets of your magic, said Annie. An evil sorcerer? Said Mr. Eiffel. Yes, said Annie. We can make him disappear, but we need you to tell us your secrets before he gets here. The 4 men just stared at her. What did she say? Asked Mr. Edison, as if he were a little hard of hearing. She says there is an evil sorcerer who wants to steal the secrets of our magic, Mr. Eiffel said loudly, and that we must tell them our secrets before the sorcerer arrives. Mr. Edison laughed, so did the others. Jack felt his face go red. The secrets of our magic, eh? Said Mr. Eiffel. That's really a very good question. Let's think. I believe the secret of my magic is quite simple. I have a taste for adventure and a love of work and responsibility, so the challenge of building the tallest structure in the world was greatly appealing to me. Very good, said Annie. A taste for adventure, love of work and responsibility. She turned to Dr. Pasteur. Doctor, what's your secret? My secret, said Dr. Pasteur. He looked down at the floor for a long moment. Then he looked up and said, I believe my secret is this. Chance favours that have prepared the mind. The other men nodded. Said Mr. Bell. Ah, said Mr. Eiffel. Indeed, said Mr. Edison. What does that mean? Said Annie. Chance means luck, exclaimed Dr. Pasteur. I dare say we all hope for a bit of luck in our work, but I find the more I study and prepare, the luckier I become. Oh, that makes good sense, said Annie. Studying makes you luckier. She turned to Mr. Edison. Alva, what's your secret? Mr. Edison smiled modestly. Well, let me see. His eyes were bright and twinkling. I suppose my top secret is this. Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. The other men laughed. That's right, said Mr. Eiffel. Sweat, hard work, thousands of experiments fail, then finally one works. The other men clapped. I get it, said Annie. Genius is mostly sweat. Everyone then turned to the last magician. Oh my, said Mr. Bell. He stroked his bushy white beard. How shall I say it? He closed his eyes. When one door closes, another door opens. Everyone started to applaud. Wait, there's more. Keeping his eyes closed, Mr. Bell continued. We often look so long and so regretfully upon the closed door that we do not see the new ones which open for us. He looked at everyone and smiled. The other men clapped again. Yes, yes, said Mr. Eiffel. There's always another door. Never give up hope, said Annie. Got it. Mr. Eiffel smiled at Annie. So, do you think our secrets would satisfy your evil sorcerer? But before Annie could answer, there was a loud knocking on the door. So Jack and Annie made it to the tower. They managed to get up there, and they've managed to gather all the secrets of the magicians. But now there's a knock at the door. Do you think it's the evil sorcerer? Chapter 9 is called The Sorcerer, so I'm guessing it is. And chapter 10 is called Good Night Magicians. So we'll be on to that tomorrow. I can't wait to find out how they deal with the evil sorcerer, or whether he really is evil. We'll find out tomorrow. So enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you again tomorrow for some more. Take care. Bye.